phenomenon that very much sustained narratives and can be exploited by the violent extremist group. This idea of interplay of these two dimensions of violent extremism go in two directions. The cumulative radicalization, meaning that is an idea that suggests that a group responds to what they see as problems in urban areas or as challenges that can encroach their lives and social norms. Just giving an example, think about how much the narratives on migration, for example, fed into the far-right violent extremism propaganda for, initiating this seed of fear in European societies towards something that was different. And this builds, of course, on the field of immigration, but is very much entangled with xenophobia, or, for example, in the very peculiar monument of anti-Muslim hostility perceived by the majority of groups. So these, opposition, these opposing factors that contribute to divide the societies and to create factors in which the seeds of extremism can, in both directions, can indeed, spring on, actually. So if the one phenomenon is cumulative radicalization, the other one that is probably also the most dangerous is the reciprocal radicalization, meaning that a group, for example, far-right extremist groups that use narratives against a specific community, like a Muslim community or migrant community in European countries, and that can provide, new narratives for extremist groups for recruiting more individuals by saying, you see, they are against us. They will not accept you, never, inside the society. So this can be the society in which you truly belong. We are experiencing on, mainstreaming concept of othering the other groups. Far-right extremist groups and jihadist groups use the othering of the other groups for creating blocks and dividing the societies, jeopardizing not just the cohesion of the society, but very much the possibility to bring all the differences inside a one holistic and really multicultural dimension. Because if you perceive the other as something different from you, and you are not just interested, but you have fear that this other is not something good for your societies because it changed the model and the privilege that you have already, that you have always had during all of your life. This is indeed a sort of crystallization of differences that can just lead to a more and more polarization in the European society. Coming really to the conclusion, where stands Italy and where stands European Union? Starting with the European Union has very clear in mind the priorities of fighting the violent extremism of all sorts and all, based or political based or religious based violent extremism in Europe. We had experienced this just looking at the European Commission recommendations for the European Union and for European countries on putting attention on prevention of the radicalization. So meaning try to work on the very rooting factors that can, trigger some of this phenomenon to take place and to develop very, very quick. But nowadays, there is also a focus always and more important on the rehabilitation and on the disengagement of individuals toward a violent extremist pathways. So European Union is starting to create an holistic strategy for trying to remove the violent extremist challenge from the European society. Italy is very much in line with this perception. Unfortunately, we experienced in the past, after the Second World War, in the 60s, in the 70s, the problem of the political-based violent extremism, both far left and far right. This gave us some, experience in trying to make our society more resilient for the growing of other kind of violent extremism. But nowadays, also Italy is experiencing this problem. In the report of the Europol that I've mentioned before, Italy is indeed identified as one of the countries in Europe in which the far right extremism is taking place, and the country in which in 2019 occurred the majority of far right terrorist attacks occurred in Italy, 7 for being precise. So this is indeed a current and actual challenge for all the European societies and for Italy in the first place. But I would like to mention that, and that's the reason why I said that this webinar is very timely, because speaking about inclusive societies, speaking about the interfaith dialogue implies to improve the reciprocal knowledge between societies and between culture. And through knowledge, we will be able to dissolve the fears that are very much, a powerful factor in, in shaping the perceptions of individuals, of citizens. If you think how much the perceptions are important for narratives and for success of the narrative, it's very easy to see that through the dialogue, through the cooperation and the education in knowing what is different from other, what is, something, yes, that is not very much similar to our experience, that can be complementary or can be totally different. This cooperation, this dialogue can help in dissolving fears and in building, not just bridges, but really new tools for shaping the future of our societies. And this will be absolutely crucial in a post-COVID-19 scenario. COVID-19 has been, and unfortunately still is, a factor that has affected societies all over the world. The effect of COVID-19 goes well behind just the health emergency. The cascade effect of the COVID-19 produced on the societies, on the field of social inclusion, economic distress, also psychological perception. It changed our ways of living the normal life, everyday life. This will probably have impact or will change the societies when we will likely be able to say that the COVID-19 will be behind our back. So the dialogues and all the tools for creating a more inclusive societies will be crucial for trying to heal the wounds created by the COVID-19, and especially for not letting the bad effects that the pandemic created on our societies to transform or to be the fertile ground for the resurgence or the growth of these violent extremism phenomena. I'm concluding here because I'm sorry I had run out my time, and for any other question I will be more than welcome to answer in the question and answer session.
For your excellent presentation. There's in your presentation you has drawn our attention at least for the violence extremism in Europe, and also the factors that cause the violent extremism in Europe. So we will discuss about it later in the Q&A session. Now I would like to invite the next speakers. Our next speaker is Imam Yahya Palavisini. He's the president and Imam of Islamic Religious Community in Italy, which is COREIS. COREIS is one of the principal organizations of institutional representation of the Islamic religion in Italy, with a vocation for theological trainings, ecumenism, and intercultural education. In 2005 until 2018, Mr. Palavisini worked as an advisor to the Italian Ministry of Interior. And since 2010, he also promotes a series of initiatives of cultural exchange and economic development with Italian Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation and the Islamic world. He has also collaborated with the United Nations and King Abdullah bin Abdul Aziz International Center for Religious and Intercultural Dialogue to devise a plan of action for religious leaders for violence prevention. So I would like to invite Mr. Palavisini. You have the floor.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank Her Excellency, the Ambassador of Indonesia in Italy for this kind invitation, but also our co-panelists from Indonesia that have been patiently sharing this occasion with, and we are looking forward to listen to your experience again, updates as we had the occasion with our dear friend Valeria Martano to have this experience in Indonesia, and we are trying to be your ambassadors in Italian interfaith relations and cooperations, even in the field of prevention to radicalism and for a better understanding among pluralism, which is the key topic of your kind invitation. So first of all, thank you again. As a Muslim believer and a European citizen, I will try to focus actually on how the example and the model of Indonesia can be of an inspiration also in the West, in Europe, and in Italy. And as it was mentioned by our first keynote speaker, His Excellency Minister Fahir, actually, of course, the context, geographical or physical or multicultural dimension of Indonesia cannot be compared to any other place although Italy and Europe can somehow be inspired by your roots. Of course, the archipelagos of those thousands of islands of Indonesia with all your dialects and cultures and history and your relations with the West in different fields of politics and international relations, but also, of course, trade and business can give an inspiration on how there is an internal pluralism and an external pluralism that can be very interesting also for the West, for Europe, and for Italy. And I think that this is quite an interesting situation because historically you have local, domestic, regional, and international links. And on the other side, you have a specific national identity. You have a specific national language that respects the pluralism of dialects. So in somehow, if I may say, my first point would be the pluralism of grammars. This is a very interesting situation because you understand, you can communicate in one national language, but you acknowledge and respect the variety of different local dialects. And if the West, if Europe, if even Italy, if I may say, could understand the added value of this link between a identity, a language identity, and the respect of local, regional, national differences, this is part of, I think, of the solution, because the problem raises when a local the identity pretends to be the only exclusive identity for all the world, for all the region, for all the nation, for all citizens and believers. While the idea is that a open-minded, wise relation starts when one understands that one has a specific identity, one has a specific grammar and language of communication, but in order to communicate with the other of his same town, of another island, of another nation, of another region, one has to take into consideration that there are different grammars, there are different languages, and we cannot impose our language to exclude the richness and variety and the cultural heritage of pluralism of languages and of cultures and of grammars. So this is, I think, the intellectual challenge we have and the problem is standardization of globalization. As His Excellency Fahir mentioned, globalization is not the problem. Globalization is part of what can help citizens and believers to be much more open-minded. But the problem is that if there is a exclusive standardization of globalization that imposes one single grammar to all the variety of populations and believers and nations and languages and grammars, then of course we would have only one language, and for the moment, for this webinar, it is English. But you, if I may say, I am using English, although I am not British. And coming from Indonesia or forever, we try to understand each other, thinking and expressing and communicating in one language, although we are still being consistent in being Indonesian and being Italian or being from any other country and language and grammar. I think this is, we are not imposing English, we are not imposing Italian, we are not imposing Indonesian, but we are trying to share and shift and frame how the contributions can help for a better comprehension and for the better cooperation. So this is, I think, the methodological approach. And if you consider the variety of dialects in Indonesia, you can also consider the variety of languages in Europe and the variety of dialects in Italy. So sometimes from the north, I'm for the moment living in Milan, but I used to live in Rome. And I have friends in Sicily. And so the situation of different dialects from north to south, as it is, can be, of course, much wider in Indonesia, is something we have to manage. And wisdom is the management of pluralism. Wisdom is the management of an open-minded, intercultural and interreligious and intracultural and intra-religious dimension. Otherwise, a lazy approach is the exclusive standardization of one model for all, which could be white supremacy, it could be black supremacy, it could be yellow, it could be red, it could be any color. But the question is that if you turn all the colors together, you have white. But if you want to impose white on all the colors, then you are erasing the variety of reality. And so in somehow you are imposing something which is not reality. So this is, I'm sorry to say, it's a methodological approach I like to take from the Indonesian model. Now, of course, my focus will be on actually 2 points. The first one is the model of a modern democracy as Indonesia that has also a reference to universal spiritual values. This is something very interesting, which I hope Italy and the West and Europe can take as an example, which is not to separate and have a conflict between universal values, spiritual dimension, and secular responsibility. So one can be, as a free choice, a full citizen in Indonesia and a specific believer of one religious identity. He does not need to erase his spiritual belonging because he's belonging to the national identity. And I think this is quite interesting philosophically and even politically speaking for the West, because some of the narratives, as Professor Manenti has mentioned very clearly, is on one side a polarization of a national identity that turns into nationalism, but in somehow this national exclusivism is excluding religion as a part of the society, is excluding spirituality, is excluding any kind of religious pluralism. And on the other side, you might have another more sophisticated challenge, which is the double standards of pluralism. So you have second-class citizens, or you have second-class believers. So on one side, you would have a first-class religion, and then the second-class religions. Or on the other side, you have a first-class citizen and a second-class citizens, according to the discrimination on religious identities or cultural or political or philosophical denominations. So this is what does not happen, according to my experience, in Indonesia. You have a full citizenship of believers and non-believers, and all different believers of several religious identities are fully citizens and as active participants to the civil society, to the political government, and to any kind of social participation. And this is, again, going back to what Mrs. Manenti mentioned, a natural antidote to radicalism and to polarization. Because if you have social inclusion of pluralism, there is no narrative that can pretend to destroy this social inclusion because they pretend to be excluded, or they pretend to be double standard discriminated, or they pretend not to have equal rights in all fields of citizenship. This does not happen in Indonesia. Believers of any religious denomination and non-believers are equally full citizens and can participate in all fields of social action. And so what's the nonsense of creating a disorder and a violent ideology pretending to promote a selfish identity? So there is not such a situation, and unfortunately, this is a debate open in the West, in Europe, and even at the transatlantic level between America and Europe. So this is, I think, my first point: to have Indonesia as a constitutional model where a modern state has references to democracy and has references to pluralism of religions and cultures and languages. This is a constitutional model of social inclusion. And on the other side, of course, interreligious dialogue. Yes, I think the following speakers will be speaking much better than me, but I could experience this very deep relation between Christians and Muslims, Hindus and Buddhists in Indonesia, and having no confusion between their spiritual and religious belief and their responsibility as a citizen of any island of Indonesia. So I think this is a very, again, interesting situation. The religious identity of Indonesia is a plural religious identity, where for the moment being, the majority of citizens belong in a peaceful and harmonious way to Islam. So the majority of citizens are not excluding the minority of other believers. And this is, I think, something which is quite interesting. It was also part of the recent encyclic by Pope Francis, where he mentions that majority and minority should not be abused in order to prevent citizens to have equal rights. And this is, again, I think, the example Indonesia shares with us. Now, my last point, where, of course, is my focus on Islam in Europe and Islam in the West, goes actually very closely to what His Excellency Minister Fakir has mentioned, which is there are two models. There is an intra-religious pluralism of Islam in Indonesia, and at least to mention two of the main organizations, Nahdlatul Ulama and Muhammadiyah, you have two different models of trying to engage with citizens and believers and Muslim youth. And this is quite interesting because I was part of the Bogor Message initiative by His Excellency, the President of Indonesia, where he called for an intra-religious international Muslim scholars consultation in order to present guidelines on Wasatiyah Islam, which is an Indonesian interpretation of a model of balance, a model of full religious behavior without any extremism, any polarization, any radicalization. And I think this was shared at an international level, and it is part of what I believe in Italy and in Europe we should promote. The question of Wasatiyah Islam, the question of the virtue of moderation as a balanced level of expression of one's own religion, which does not mean to have a soft attitude in faith. One can be completely, very devotedly Christian and Hindu and Buddhist and Muslim in the world, but he expresses and behaves according to a harmony in the context, without any self-promotion or propaganda or radicalization or violence or hatred for the other. I think this is the model of Wasatiyah Islam that was launched by His Excellency the President of Indonesia, with the agreement and the support of many Muslim scholars worldwide, and is one very interesting model. The other model comes from Nahdlatul Ulama recent, I mean, not in these last years, which is especially mentioned on the focused on the term of rahmah, which is mercy. So if mercy inspires our Islamic doctrine and our Muslim behavior, let us promote mercy as a specific added quality in life and in brotherhood and in interreligious cooperation. And I think this is a very interesting situation that is leading to another concept of Islam, which is humanitarian Islam. This is nothing of my side. This is something I am learning in these years by Nahdlatul Ulama, by Pak Yahya, the Secretary General of Nahdlatul Ulama, who is proposing humanitarian Islam based on the concept of rahmah, based on the quality of mercy, as an added value for domestic and international, interreligious and intra-religious dimensions and cooperations. So I think this is, as you see, from Indonesia, you have a plural, at least, just to be concentrated in my time limit, two models of Islam that can be international. One is Wasatiyya Islam, and the other one is Humanitarian Islam. One is the model of a balance in harmony, a virtue that goes beyond extremism, and the other one is the quality of mercy as a guideline for international, interreligious, and intra-religious relations. So I think this is a very interesting situation. We are, as Quraysh, trying to implement this with reference directly to Indonesian scholars in Europe and in Italy, and because we feel that these universal principles are shared by our brothers and sisters of other faith communities and can be an inspiration and an antidote to any kind of exclusivism, hatred, discrimination of other groups that pretend to go against this universal and plural cohesive society. So again, this is part of my experience and part of our work. But again, thanks to Her Excellency the Ambassador and for this great occasion, and I'll be available for the Q&A session. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Peace to you all. I think you are muted. I have finished.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So thank you, Imam Maya, for your presentation. In your presentation, you have exploring about how Indonesia can be an example for the pluralism, and also you explain about Islam in Europe. Now, I think this is a very interesting issues that we can discuss more in the Q&A session. Now, I would like to invite the next speakers. The next speaker is Father Agustinus Heri Wibowo. He is the Executive Secretary of the Commission for Ecumenical and Interreligious Affairs at Indonesian Bishops' Conference, the Episcopal Conference of the Catholic Bishop of Indonesia. Father Heri is also the chairperson of the Institute for Friendship of Religious Organizations in Indonesia and a member of the Advisory Council of Interfaith Rainforest Initiative. He has been actively involved in giving recommendations to the National Deliberation on Interfaith and Civilization Cooperation. So now I would like to invite Father Heri. Father Heri, you have the floor. Please, Mr. Heri.
Selamat siang, selamat sore kepada teman Indonesia. Thank you so much for this invitation. First of all, let me...
Excuse me.
Sorry?
I'm inviting Father Agustinus Heri Wibowo.
Sorry.
Madam Filori.
After this.
I'm so sorry. Father Heri Wibowo, do you hear me?
Ada.
Father Heri? Pak Heri Wibowo? Father Heri Wibowo?
Ya, dia masih mati, masih di.
Can you unmute?
Can you mute your mic, Father Father Heri?
Okay.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay.
So you have the floor now.
Thank you. Good day, everyone. Nice to be here today. Ladies and gentlemen, before I present my presentation, I will convey that because there are few similarities between Mr. Fahir's presentations and mine, seems that I will skip several slides. Hope this is okay with you all, but I believe they have different angle or point of view. my presentation related to the challenges and opportunities of pluralism in achieving an inclusive society in today's world, Indonesia and Italy's perspective and experiences, based on my experiences joined with the Indonesian Bishops Conference. I will share my presentation. Okay, Her Excellency, the Ambassador of Indonesia to Italy, Bu Esti Handayani, thank you for your invitation. I will start my presentation. Part 1 about Indonesian perspective. This is Indonesia. This is map of Indonesia. This is my country and my motherland, from Sabang, this place, to Merauke, this place, from Miangas, this place, to Rote Island, this place, in the frame of the Republic of Indonesia. Okay. We have 4 pillars or basic foundation. This is the important things for Indonesia still exists. The one is Pancasila, and then our constitution, and then unitary state of the Republic of Indonesia, and then unity in diversity. We call it Bhinneka Tunggal Ika. It's a collection of noble values and moral principles of Indonesian that guide the achievement of justice, prosperous, social welfare, and dignified. The 4 pillars of the nation and state is understood as fundamental, essential in the life of the Indonesian nation. I see Indonesia as belong. From Sabang to Merauke, from Miangas to Rote Island, this is not about the geography tagline, but it's about geopolitically concept. From Sabang to Merauke, from Miangas to Rote Island concept as Indonesian geopolitical include entity of social consciousness of man, national entity, ideological entity, state entity. 4 of them we name NKRI. Pancasila as a spirit. Pancasila as a nation spirit. William Chang said that Indonesia as a nation will lose its spirit without Pancasila. The nation spirit strongly affects and determines the whole rhythm of life of the people in the field of social, economic, and political. The spirit is Pancasila. The incarnation of Pancasila can be seen in the harmony, tolerance, and mutual respect in faith and belief, equal in dignity, rights, and justice, responsible freedom of expression, and social solidarities. Pancasila as the way of life. Pancasila as the way of life means a source to be used as a guide to life. All rules and norms are made to achieve the nation's objectives. Pancasila as an ideology is established from the spiritual, moral, and cultural wealth of Indonesian society and comes from the nation's view of life. Pancasila should be used as a guide for Indonesian nation's life to unify the nation and to create a welfare state condition. Part 2 about opportunities and challenges. This part already mentioned by Bapak Fahir, and I will jump to my next slide. Opportunities. Pluralism can become opportunities to complement others, to enrich others, and to create a beautiful mosaic, such like a pretty rainbow, an opportunity where people can live side by side harmoniously. The various tribes, cultures, religions, race, and codes of society must be maintained to promote a coloring, tolerant life in Indonesia. Challenges. However, on the other side, plural society can become a challenge and often suffers problems of sectional conflict if it could not be managed wisely. Important thought. Value to manage diversity will result conflict and tensions. On the other side, a good and wise management in plural and diverse society can prevent conflict and become a strength to develop a peaceful, tolerant society. Part 3 about experiences. In this precious time, I am as Executive Secretary of Commission for Ecumenical and Interreligious Affairs of Bishops Conference of Indonesia is going to present about the religious and social harmony in Indonesia, which can be seen from my pictures telling activities have been carried out during November 2018 to December 2020. This is talk about interreligious harmony in Indonesia. This is my president, Mr. Jokowi. This is me. I am very proud to him. I am quoting Vice President of Indonesia, Mr. Ma'ruf Amin. This is Mr. Ma'ruf Amin and this is me. The harmony among religious communities is a foundation of national harmony. Building and promoting religious harmony will support the creation of inclusiveness society in Indonesia recently. This is the Religious Harmony Forum with the Minister of Religion, Mr. Fakrul Rosi. This is me. When religious leaders speak out, yell, harmony, harmony, harmony for 3 times. Harmony makes Indonesia move forward. This picture is talking about an ecumenical activity where Catholic Church and Christian Church and its denominations met and agreed for having a cooperation. In Indonesia, we have a forum named FUCRI, or Indonesian Christian Forum, which has activities such as met and participated in the International Week of Prayer 2019 to pray for the world peace, national dialogue to uphold the unity and integrity of the nation and to protect the country's sovereignty. Interreligious regular meeting as a forum to dialogue topics related to harmony values, Indonesian unity and integrity. Activities to strengthen relationship with other religions. Our visit to Buddhist community to understand and learn about Buddhism in Indonesia, about its values and spirituality. The visit was to strengthen our ties as we call it, as an interreligious brotherhood visit. Visited and met with Islamic religious leaders, we learned and wanted to understand further about Islamic boarding school, including to draw ideas from its education system on interreligious brotherhood. Strengthen relationship with Muhammadiyah leaders. Muhammadiyah is one of major Islamic organizations in Indonesia. One of the joint activities with Muhammadiyah was informal meeting with Indonesian Army to talk about the participation of religious leaders in setting up national vision. This is the Secretary General of Muhammadiyah, this is me. Strengthen relationship with Nahdlatul Ulama, the biggest traditionalist Islamic mass organization in Indonesia. One of Nahdlatul Ulama's important standpoints is to urge Muslims to refrain from using the word kafir, infidels, to describe non-Muslim. This decision came after the Nahdlatul Ulama's Clerics National Meeting February 2019. This is harmony partnership, not just being developed with the major Islamic organization. The Bishop Conference also establishes partnership with the Islamic organization friendship body and have a commitment to interreligious convergence on peace and harmony. This is interfaith and interreligious synergy through prior to the 5th presidential debate 2019. This is me. This is interfaith and interreligious synergy to distribute donation for people affected COVID-19. Since 5 years ago, 2015, Youth Commission in the Indonesian Bishop Conference has been conducting annual national meeting for youth and participated by representatives of religions on belief organizations in Indonesia. For 2020, the offline meeting was replaced with virtual meeting and social action for people affected by COVID-19 or COVID-19 pandemic. The alumni of these meetings, the alumni, were become initiators of Operation Command Post, like this. Synergy between interfaith and the government in order to prevent terrorism and radicalism. Terrorists are enemies of religion and enemies of the state. There is no religious teaching that justifies terrorism, and no country allows terrorism to threaten the safety of its citizens. Furthermore, National Counter-Terrorism Agency or BNPT responded with a joint statement condemning all forms of violence against anyone, anywhere, for any reason and for any purpose. This is me. This is head of police or head of BNPT. This is Interfaith Rainforest Initiative Indonesia. This is building tolerance by praying together among interfaith via online due to the COVID-19 pandemic. We prayed for the health of religious leaders, society, and all people who suffer of COVID-19. This is my activities, more, and more. Those pictures reflect unity in diversity. We call Bhinneka Tunggal Ika spirit. The sustainable good partnership and friendship of Catholic Church with other religious organizations and belief organizations are examples of harmonious living among interfaith and interreligious. In our daily life, people basically uphold the values of tolerance and want to live side by side peacefully. If there is any violence, it could be caused by specific factors such as the weakness of national concept and provocations by the radical group, etc. In Indonesia, harmony and inclusiveness in reality could be achieved through interfaith and interreligious dialogue and cooperation on the issues of together against terrorism, promoting spirit of tolerance, working together hand in hand as a nation, obeying the law and support the government, unity for human solidarity, work together to preserve environment. Looking to today's world with Indonesia's perspective, friendship and respectfulness are mandatory to create a harmonious society, from the very local community to wider society, and we have to be part of it. It needs goodwill and mutual support to realize a peaceful nation and harmony in diversity. Then we have to bring this to global society for the world peace. Reflection. To create the world peace must start from every individual country. If there is peace in all countries, then it will contribute to world peace. The culture of living in peace must becomes a way of life. How to feel, how to think, and how to act. Regardless any differences that may exist, including the diverse nations, all are brothers in humanity. A culture of peace, this should also be done to a fellow creation of the other, so that the earth becomes a home, will be a place that is safe, comfortable, and beautiful for us to live in together. To support the world peace is a mandate of the preamble of our Constitution of the Republic of Indonesia, paragraph 4. In order to contribute to the establishment of a world order based on freedom, abiding peace, and social justice. Thank you. Finish.
Sudah ya? Okay. Thank you, Father Heriwibowo, for your presentation. I think we almost run out of time right now, so I would like straight to the next speakers, Ibu Ruby Khalifa. Ibu Khalifa is the Secretary General of ASEAN Muslim Action Network. This is AMAN. She is now an activist in Women, Peace and Security, and with AMAN, she initiated Women's School for Peace, a leadership incubator for women, and that has been established in 7 provinces in Indonesia right now. Now I would like to invite Madam Ruby Khalifa Madam Rivia, you have the floor right now. Please.
Okay, thank you. I hope you can hear my voice clearly. So, good evening and good morning or good afternoon for everyone. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. It's been pleasure to be part of this forum and also listening from other panelists have a strong message in terms of the dealing with diversities in our country, Indonesia, and also Italy. I think in my context, I'm interested to focus on more exploring our experience in doing intra-faith dialogue. So let me congratulate for the embassy, Indonesia embassy in Italy, and also thank you for the Ambassador Esti Andayani for inviting me. I've been working with the Asian Muslim Action Network in the last 13 years. And one of the focus of our work is actually providing intra and interfaith dialogue and strengthening the role of women in peace building. So my today presentation will be more focusing on a kind of reflection from my personal journey in stepping the process on how actually to embrace different people, different groups, so that they can live harmoniously in the community. So Aman Indonesia has been working in 7 provinces. In the last 13 years, we already engaged at almost 2,000 interfaith mothers at the grassroots level. So they are the champion for opening the conversation with their neighbors, as well as they also providing space how actually the different people in the community can interact each other, and using the local medium, some of actually using the traditional means, the culture. The others is also using the organic farming because of the land abandoned after the conflict in subnational, and particularly for those areas who experienced armed conflict before in Indonesia. So the title of my presentation is a bit provocative, maybe different voices, a bit from some of the speakers from Indonesia, but this is very much my personal reflection that we've been too much working in the comfort zone. We know that yes, we are diverse, and yes, Indonesia has been blessed by God having beautiful country and diverse, and we are moving into a better and democratic system. But on the other hand, we are also facing some challenges that Pak Fahir and also Romo just mentioned about some of the challenges that we are facing. So one of the challenges that actually currently we are facing is actually within Muslim themselves. So therefore, it is uncomfortable to actually talk about it because we are Muslim and they are Muslim. The other situation that you may find that we believe in a similar holy book, and we practicing Islam, but the way we practicing Islam is a bit different. But then because of the globalization and the influence of the social media, where actually the single truth trying to impose, as a narrative in social media, somehow that's actually shrinking our space for having, like safe space of dialogue that able actually to talk openly without feeling fear. Because we are different school of thoughts, because we are different in practicing Islam, because we are actually different in engaging with the political party or any kind of differences that we are having. So that all the comfortable things that we would like to challenge in the last of 3 years in our work in Indonesia, therefore I call it leaving the comfort zone, because we don't want to talk to the comfort. We want to talk to the people that actually different from us, that actually against our belief, that even hate us. And that actually we started the program on the dialogue 3 years ago, and until now we're still using it. Just skip my profile. Okay, so with all of that, actually, what the unique of Indonesia, I just mentioned about intersectional. The intercultural or interreligious marriage happen in Indonesia is blessing, because that kind of practicing have been proved by many studies that saving a lot of lives during the conflict because of the family, ties in the community. So because of that, actually some of the area that experience conflict, they are able to resolve quickly, and that is impossible that one ethnic associated with a particular religion strictly in Indonesia is a bit fluid and blur, and the national identity is very strong, and it is irreplaceable. I do believe that though currently the voices of the small group that trying to promote single truth, about Islam or proposing Islamic State, is a small entity, but they're using media very carefully and using media very much, that therefore the voices is very loud. And I do believe if we stick on believing that the diversity is natural and given from God, and we work on that, including protection from the minority, we actually will pass on that. Let me also reflect on the issue of interfaith dialogue. So this, my personal journey, having engaging with the interfaith dialogue, I think there are lack of focus. In any interfaith dialogue to succeed, all parties must be clear on the conversation goal. But it is very often that we don't do a specific dialogue. We do like more like understanding commonality. Yes, we are, and very obvious in our society, and we know already. And with that, actually, we escape something that's sensitive in interfaith dialogue. And the dialogue often used for finding solution right away. But in my experience, dealing with peace building, for instance, the dialogue is more strategic in building common understanding. If the dialogue is intended to get solution right away, maybe not be able to listen each person's personal journey over the issues that often shape one perception, or it is definitely close a reflective room for someone who needs some time to understand others organically and come up with a various potential solution. The dialogue can lead to solution when it is make everyone comfortable, and when it is a room of reflection. So you don't need to feeling fear by having dialogue. And the others, my reflection is about the challenge of the intra-interfaith dialogue is about tackling sensitivity. I think many of us trying to avoiding something sensitive, or hesitation to question about the deeper belief on other side, because we worry about being hurt, or we worry about hurting somebody, or other things. Or the worst thing is attempting to convert someone from one religion, beliefs, or opinion to another. It's a mess. Is chaotic dialogue, because when you started to have intention to convert others, that means that you don't believe others. You only believe yourself, and you push the belief to others. And other thing is, in my context, when we actually having dialogue, a religious dialogue, it tends to go into debating on the religious reverence when it's come to a particular values. So that then you actually don't have time from their personal experience rather than taking up the reference that you read. So that it has like gaps for somebody to really curiously understanding why I don't have that reference. Later on, when you actually starting to dig down on your personal experience, but you starting with a reference, then everyone will like close the door and then using their reference and end up of the dialogue. And it is often not enough preparation, and there is no access of ground rules that are actually helping in creating a safe space and secure feeling of not being judged by others because of different perspective. But the dialogue that I'm facing in the rest of my life in Moses, a kind of seminar, kind of collaboration work and all this, but the deep dialogue that actually can create really a deeper understanding, we need to learn more on that. Because of that, our organization believes that we need to open the possibility how actually we can engage a dialogue more instead of having more seminar. So why we do need dialogue, in particularly among Muslims themselves, because we believe that there are many schools of thoughts. I believe if you are Muslim living in other country, you also knowing that many school of thoughts within Islam that often conflicting each other because lack of understanding among followers, then tension rise. Or even the worst, if a particular group imposing the only truth and the only belief that they call it the true Islam, so that they become more, tension or even conflict. The other side, in post-truth society, a room for being different is shrinking right now. I have to confess that Indonesia is one of the biggest social media user. That's a good side, but the other side is a big challenge for us. How actually we can educate, the user to be more literate in using media. However, the particular group that very much associated with very conservative to extremist group, they are very much talented in using social media, and they are doing a lot of propaganda using the media. And what happened is the truth claim is raising because of the influence of spreading intolerance and the radical thinking. And why we are very much focused on the women issue, because gender narrative are often used by the conservative or radical groups to promote single interpretation, which is not gender sensitive. I believe in Indonesia, Southeast Asia, women rules in public are very, very obvious. It is given, it is there. And if suddenly a particular group propose that women should domesticate in the house, there's something wrong with that. And I believe that Islam very much support on the promotion of gender equality. And our program, it's much engaging women ulama. Maybe for some of you it is very new, but in Indonesia context, we're using the term of ulama for male or also for female. We don't have restriction on that. So with the collaborative work, Indonesia Women Ulama Congress established in 2017. Aman as part of that. Others organization initiated this Congress, as well as they supported from the Ministry of Religious Affairs, creating very comfortable space for all women ulama in Indonesia to joining and also more doing advocacy and the promotion of the interpretation that is gender sensitive. So women ulama have been contributing to education, development, humanity, women empowerment and peace, and even tackling gender-based violence in Indonesia directly. So all of the role that women ulama has been done in Indonesia need to be expanded, need to be challenged, in the context where interfaith dialogue is one of the challenges room, because they need to meet somebody that totally different perspective of the interpretation or different experience on that. So therefore, after doing assessment, we realizing that very limited exposure among women ulama that able to really having dialogue with other women ulama coming from Shia, Ahmadi, Salafi, Wahhabi, and some other groups in Indonesia. For us is very interesting, and that needs to be challenged. And with that, actually, we understand that it needs some skill. And that is the management of dialogue is very important, and that we actually introduce. So one of the things that we are starting, I share with you is the women ulama in Indonesia having dialogue with the Salafi group in southern Thailand. This program initiated by Aman in collaboration with Walailak University as well as the Oxfam group. The idea is actually to expand the good practice of Indonesia in southern Thailand. We understand very well that southern Thailand is actually more believing Islam in more learning reference from Malaysia instead of from Indonesia. And in Indonesian Islam is been a bit weird, and they consider as too liberal, because we're embracing democratic, and at the same time we're also producing a lot of interpretation that very progressive as well as the gender sensitive. So in particularly dialogue, we exercising how actually to influence the male leaders, actually the male leaders and scholar about gender justice. For the sake of your understanding, that the work on gender equality and gender justice in Indonesia has been started for a long time ago. And in 1980s, the discourse on gender and Islam has been started, and there are a lot of reference already produced, as well as the very good ulama, male or female, that actually believing on gender equality, and they are working very hard in actually contesting with other interpretation that actually very much gender insensitive. So what we did actually, we know that Salafi against gender equality for somehow in particular issue, so that we need to really carefully to enter the dialogue. But one thing that familiar for Southern Thailand is about Aceh. And that is actually the door that we actually enter by sharing the success of Aceh, of the peace agreement, and the growing of how Aceh also working on gender equality. The other is actually we bringing the more, a balance of male ulama in order to support, the argumentation that male also very possible to support gender equality. When gender equality exists, that actually for the sick women and women and men and other genders welfare and happiness, not only for the women. And the other strategy that we also introduce is shifting narrative of gender equality into partnership, reciprocity, or in Arabic language we use is mubadalah, is actually coming from the work of the Fakihuddin. The Dr. Fakihuddin introduced the approach of Mubadalah in order actually to win the heart from religious, because when we come to gender and they just close the door. But in this conversation, we trying to use different way how actually to introduce gender equality, but having different narrative to describe what actually it looked like. And that is very nice to have the conversation with a very humble and opening, including the sharing the reference. The other dialogue that I would like to share with you is the reflective structured dialogue, is the dangerous dialogue. Why dangerous? Because it's talking about very, very sensitive issue. And for that, actually, we started among women ulama coming from different school of thoughts and coming from different association. the Sunni, Shia, Ahmadi, Wahhabi, and Salafi become our target, that we are interested to sit with them, because in a normal day, we don't actually enough time to really sit and talk and dialogue about the sensitive issue. Yeah, what is a sensitive issue? Is about the prevention of the child marriage, about hijab, polygamy, polygamous marriage, the Muslim relation with non-Muslim, Sharia, Islam, and some other issue that actually creating tension in our society. Why we need dialogue on those people? Because in our tradition, Muslim believe that diversity in the school of thought is exists. It is there. It is in our society. It is being practicing, and it is often creating attention. But realizing on that, actually, we want to create understanding. We don't need to find any solution first, but we want to set up the tone that we want to talk. And we want to create understanding why you say that polygamy is compulsory in Islam, or it is a sunnah in Islam, or it is not, or why you say hijab is compulsory, or it is not, or it is don't know, and some other things, but with the very using particularly management. Here is the process. We have pre-dialogue. It's about like 3 months. It's a long pre-dialogue. We do profiling, we understand whom actually going to engage with the dialogue. We setting the team. We also doing capacity building for them to understand why we need dialogue. And also we also deciding the topic that those people comfortable to talk about. And also during dialogue is in particularly a bit different with the others approach. It is very formal session. It is formal session with the ground rule setting, and with the structure question that people can actually answer, with a particular duration, 2 minutes, everyone speak, every time everyone speak 2 minutes, and with the go around format, so that everyone can have listening very much to others, and from the other side, they can have a space to actually reflect. And after the dialogue, so this is just example how the dialogue. We don't use reference. We ask them to push aside for a while using the reference, but we just want to hear from their heart what they understand about something. And here is the narrative that I would like to share with you, and maybe you also will see how it is different. And some of them believe that hijab is compulsory. Some of them not sure. Some of them feel that it is choice, cannot be forced for any kind of authority. And when you see the narrative from the compulsory side, in here is, I started wearing hijab since I was a child. I went to school where hijab is compulsory, and living in a neighborhood where women wearing hijab. From the reference that I read, hijab is compulsory for women. You can see that they don't even read other reference that saying it is choice, right? And from the not sure hijab, I started wearing hijab 5 years ago. The reason was because regulation in my office to encourage Muslim women to wear hijab, and I feel fine. I don't wear hijab at home. I don't force others to wear. So I am sure whether hijab is compulsory or not, but I can respect where people wearing hijab. And this is another interesting narrative that I would like to say, pay attention on it. So that women that saying on hijab is choice is the big ulama, and her father and her grandfather is a Greek ulama in the area. She said like this: my grandpa was the influential and knowledgeable cleric in our province. His wife wore a thin headscarf. It's very traditional headscarf of Indonesia, which people could see her hair and neck. My mother did the same thing. My grandpa was never told them to change the way they were wearing hijab, because there were many other big things to talk about Islam rather than hijab. Myself started wearing hijab when I was in Islamic boarding school. I searched a lot of Islamic texts and found that hijab is not compulsory. Do they fight each other? Of course not, because of the structure that we built up. What in here, the room of reflection is like this, that we're expecting to everyone, in particularly whether you're wearing full hijab, you're wearing black, you're wearing colorful or whatever. So we want them to reflect that if hijab is compulsory, why did the great ulama let his wife wearing kerudung or the, the headscarf with her hair still exposing? If hijab is compulsory, why did the great ulama in the past never use the issue as a topic of preaching? And if hijab is a compulsory, why many Indonesian Muslim women did not wear hijab in the past comparing nowadays? So that is a space for reflection. Why we want to bring up this issue? Because there are a huge wave in the social media to promote that the only single truth about the correct hijab or the Shari hijab. And for me, it is dangerous, because Islam has a multi-interpretation, because we have different school of thoughts and we have to respect on school of thoughts that we believe in Indonesia. So well, from that, actually, I want to draw some lesson here is, I think finding as the people, a group working on gender equality, we need to find more creative way in, drawing the alternative narrative to engage male religious leaders. Why male religious leaders important? Because they are our partners. They need to also promote gender equality, because gender equality, it is not for the purpose of only women, it is for our society. And the work of Mubadala is currently we are using it and more actually opening conversation about it. And the approaching audience with theological reference and universal values that human being is equal is very strategic. I think talking with men should start at something very big, that human being equal. We are born as human being and we are equal. It's very different when we approach a women. When we approach a women, you start very personal thing. And that actually drove the womanhood, the commonality among the women. And substantial justice is very important to bring. It's not something that technical thing, because we are often fighting with the technical thing, not something substantial. And others issue is about language. When we do dialogue in Patani, we feel that they are also part of our brothers and sisters by sharing the language. However, translation is very important. So not hindering anyone to actually engage the dialogue. For that, actually, the support on having interpreters is very, very important in this case. So not only people speaking English only having the dialogue. The ground rules is another important aspect in the dialogue, because when the participant knowing the ground rules at the beginning, so they feel more comfortable. They feel they will, they will be guaranteed that they are not being cornered in the dialogue, or they're not being judged by somebody in the dialogue because of different opinion. For that reason, at the beginning, when we do pre-dialogue or preparation, so important to really discover what fears of each participant by they meeting each other later on. And that actually the honesty that we want to have. So I have to
excuse me.
I have to end.
We are already running out of time right now, actually.
Okay.
So if you can
yes. Can I have 1 minute to wrap up? Yeah. 1 minute.
1 minute.
Okay. So this is just one method when we do dialogue. And then this is very important. We often talking about dialogue, but actually whether we have a skill and knowledge, when it comes to dialogue, talking something sensitive that we often avoiding in our life. And I think the dialogue is very much crucial, and is very much strategic for preserving the social inclusion in our society. Only that, I think the government also need to support any good initiative that can actually expand the skill to others. So then people will have dialogue with happy and also enjoying the exchange during dialogue. I should stop now, and thank you so much for the listening. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you very much, Madam Ruby Khalifa. Now, because we are already running out of time right now, but I would like to extend our web meeting until 12:30, if you don't mind. Now, I'd like to invite the next speakers, Madam Valeria Martano. Now you have the floor, Madam Valeria Martano, please.
Good afternoon, and thank you so much to Ibu Esti to promote this meeting, because in this time of COVID, of coronavirus, we are really missing the chance to get together and talk and discuss. And this gives us a big challenge, because actually dialogue is made of mutual meeting, of mutual understanding, of working together. What's going on? It's okay. And we miss all this, frankly speaking, as I myself miss Indonesia. And it's very important to struggle in this time to carry on our dialogue. I will try to be very, very short, as time is very limited, it's very late, we can say. And let me bring you to, non si apre, vabbè, non importa, to the square of St. Peter on March 28, 2020. This year we cannot discuss of how carry on our dialogue in inclusive society without taking note that we are facing an unexpected and unpredictable situation, which is the coronavirus pandemic. And I think that we, as men and women of religion, as men and women of dialogue, cannot escape from the challenge of this time. On March 28, Pope Francis, in an empty square of St. Peter, this is a picture that I think made the tour of the world, has been seen worldwide. He was alone on the square, and he said something that is, I think, a bit universal. He said, we have realized that we are on the same boat. All of us fragile and disoriented, but at the same time important and needed. All of us called to row together, each of us in need of comforting the other. On this boat are all of us. Actually, this is the first time in history that the whole humanity is facing the same enemy. And this enemy is the coronavirus. This unexperienced situation has put each one of us, individuals, societies, states, religions, in front of a choice. What should we do? Protect ourselves, as some countries are doing, or doing something to get together, rowing together, as Pope Francis said. Actually, many countries are enlarging the gap. I want to quote what Grand Imam Al-Azhar, Ahmed Al-Tayeb, said, that together with the pandemic, he said, another ancient epidemic is being renewed, which is the pandemic of discrimination and racism, a disease that affects and erodes human consciousness. You see here the Grand Imam Al-Tayeb. He said that we need to find the vaccine, the antidote to the pandemic of racism, of discrimination. The Grand Imam Al-Azhar says is human brotherhood, human fraternity. We see here the picture when he, together with Pope Francis, signed this document, a human fraternity, at the end of 2019, 1 year and a half ago. Actually, this is our task. This must be our commitment, but we cannot deny or undervalue that there are big challenges. The first of this challenge is the extreme growth of poverty that we are facing in present time. Since the beginning of the pandemic, the growth of poverty is devastating. We have to say that the least developed countries had to revise the forecasting of poverty from October 2019 to October 2020. They are facing the worst recession in 30 years. The expectation of life level has dropped of 5%. This is, and in this map we can see which are these countries which are more affected. And we have to recognize that this situation of growing of poverty is strictly connected with the extremism and violence rise up. Actually, I want to give you only one example. Inequality gives room to extremism and violence. And we see the insurgence of some new conflicts in some of these least developed countries. I give you the example of Cabo Delgado, the northern part of Mozambique, where we are facing a so-called jihadistic insurgents from a group which is called Al-Shabaab. They use the Islamic flags, but of course there is nothing of Islamic in this, but they are disseminating hatred and hundreds of thousands of refugees that is going to make a big growth in the poverty. Poverty anyway is also growing in Europe. We as a community of Sant'Egidio, we are facing starvation in Italy. This is something that we did not face since the Second World War. And this is a consequence of the pandemic that's going on. The same we can say for Latin America. And we are also testifying a new insurgency of violence and extremism. We saw it in Paris, we saw it in Vienna, in Österreich, and we saw it in Indonesia as well, in Papua and in Lewono recently. We have here. So what is the concern of religious people? I want to quote here, we read what the Conferenza Igreja Indonesia, the Bishops' Conference of Indonesia, has made a statement after the insurgency in Lewono. I just read one of the last sentences in English. We cannot, at the end, the Bishops' Conference and the Catholic hope that what happened in Lewono does not affect or weaken the link among religions and faiths that brought us up to here. I think that this is a very wise reaction, and this must be our reaction from any religion. We need to get together and to row together. The new world that will come out from the pandemic needs religions, because it needs a soul, because a world made only of economy, of market, has shown its weakness in front of a very small virus that's taking all of us in a situation of war. Let me give other 2 minutes, sorry, I will try to go very, very quickly because I know that's very late, but I want to just to say that what is the commitment of Indonesia and Italy on this level. I will go very, very quickly. This is a picture of Abdurrahman Waido with me and my friend Agung Tranggono, which is very well known in the religious circles of Indonesia many years ago. But I mean that Indonesia has some treasures, some mainstream of dialogue, which have been very, very important. we have to remember who was Abdurrahman Wahid and his struggle for peace. And I give here some steps after this. This is the signing of the second MOU between Sant'Egidio and Muhammadiyah as a base of common ground of cooperation for dialogue. But also another moment, important moment, the Interfaith Dialogue for Peace and Coexistence in the Parliament, the MPR Aula. This shows that social society, civil society and institutions in Indonesia have been working together for many years. And in the tour of this, and this is the last visit of Minister of Foreign Affairs, Retno Marsudi, to Rome, where we carried on this bilateral dialogue between Indonesia and Italy that started in 2009, and that's going carrying on up to now. Well, now back to Rome. This is one of the last meetings that we had on October 20. From all over the world, religious leaders came despite of the pandemic to show their willingness not to give up. Jangan menyerah, dalam bahasa Indonesia. We do not give up. We don't want to give up to dialogue. We don't want to give the world the chance to build the world after the pandemic on the same basis that the world before the pandemic. I think this is the big task of religions today. So let's go ahead. What are, I take just really 1 minute to say some points which need to be taken into serious consideration by religious leaders to in front of the new world that's going to be prepared by the after the pandemic. So we have some issues. I just quote 3. 1, fighting poverty. 2, working together for world peace. 3, the protection of the environment. We did not have enough time to speak about the disaster of ecology, in which also that is witnessed also in Indonesia. But we need to face these 3 big challenges. This is the role of religions all together. I close with these words, which are the last part of the appeal that has been signed by all the religious leaders in Rome last October 20. Just a few sentences. Let us work together to create a new architecture of peace, and that the pandemic is reminding us that we are blood brothers and sisters. I think that this is a new wisdom. Yes, we are blood brothers and sisters. Our blood can be affected exactly at the same way all over the world. That's why we need to get together to fight the enemy of pandemic today. The religious leaders have requested, have claimed to the nations for the free vaccine for all as soon as possible. But let's struggle together. I think this is our task, this is our commitment to fight the other pandemic, which is, as Grand Imam Al-Azhar said, the pandemic of racism, of discrimination, of conflicts about religious communities. So thank you. Sorry for being so quick and maybe sometimes confused, but time is over. Thanks.
So, thank you, Dr. Valeria Martano, for your presentation. Now I would like to begin for the Q&A session, but considering that we are already running out of time right now, maybe I could entertain only one question. But before I continue with the question, I have one question actually. I would like to address this question to Karen resource persons to maybe I will address my question to Ms. Francisca Manetti. My question is how is the role of the civil society, like a religion or association or cultural community, in promoting pluralism in European continent, particularly for the young generation? So we know that every country have a different historical background and character and policy. So maybe you can elaborate more on this. How is the role of civil society, like association or cultural community, in promoting the pluralism in European continent? Maybe you can exploring more about this issue. Please,
yes, thank you. Thank you very much for the question. Actually, the role of the civil society organization in promoting dialogue is very important. It's also very historical. I mean that in some European societies, I speak for the Italian societies, for example, it is very much embedded in the, social pattern to have civil society organization working with the communities, especially with the youngest, both inside schools or inside, religious environments and etc. But they are very present and they are a link between the communities and the families. So they are also a place where, how may I say, the activities that the civil society organization implement at the local level are sometimes, a point of aggregation and help different individuals to come and to experience in the first place a sense of community and environment of social engagement, and if they are crucial for creating also a basic form, a preliminary form of socialization that can be not alternative but complementary to the to the education that individuals receive inside the family or at schools and etc. The most important things, according to what we are experiencing right now, is that also the institutions are perceiving the importance of the civil society organization and their role in building up an inclusive society. There are funding lines by European Union Commission, but also at national levels for creating, projects involving different kinds of actors that can be researchers, think tanks, academia, public bodies, also law enforcement agencies. But there is a part and a special focus always on the involvement of the civil society organization, because the authorities nowadays are more and more recognizing the role of the civil society organization in being like the first line practitioners, creating a bridge between the local communities and the authorities, the institutions, the policymakers, and etc. So they are a very important and valuable tool, also a channel for communication, and they are crucial for both as intercepting preliminary signs that can be useful for understanding if something is going wrong or well, but on the other side also they are crucial for creating the occasions for the reciprocal knowledge and the interaction that is in the very baseline for the the inclusion among the different local communities in Europe.
Thank you, Ms. Francisca, for your response. So maybe the other resource person would like to add to this question, Imam Yahya, or maybe Ibu Francisca, Dr. Valentina Martano.
Well, maybe briefly, if I may, I perfectly agree on what was mentioned. I think that the approach is interdisciplinary and interinstitutional. We have to join forces in a brotherly alliance and understand that the enemy of peace and of brotherhood is unfortunately working in different levels and in different fields. So if we combine our social civil society responsibilities with the institutional support, we can actually be more successful in spreading the values and in preventing violence.
Okay, thank you, Imam Yahya. Maybe Dr. Valerie Martano, you have something to add to this question about the role of the civil society?
Yes, I think that this combination between civil society and institution is absolutely needed. Otherwise, if the framework of the laws of the society does not change, of course, the efforts of individuals is too weak. On the contrary, we cannot, if the society does not receive the inputs of new frameworks, this will be fragile. So I think that the two levels of dialogue must be kept together as, I mean, at top level and at grassroots level, we must work so that on one side, a new consciousness comes out in the life of people. It was very interesting what our friend Rubik Olifia told about the women. Women must get together and get a new consciousness of their condition, of their energies and their potentiality. And this is grassroots work that must be done. But at the same level, we must put this need at the top level of the institution, because if institutions do not give this chance, it will be really.
Well, thank you for your response. So I think we have reached the end of the webinar right now. We don't have any more time. But before we close end this webinar, let me read you about the conclusion for the webinar. I think there's a key point from today's webinar is we have note here. Indonesia and Italy are committed to achieve inclusive society, respectively, despite various challenges that they have to deal. Extremism in both countries can originate not only because the religious background, but also political standpoint that emerge as extreme ideologies. For Indonesia's part, that is part of our DNA to build interfaith dialogue and peace building. And the second is partnership and friendship of different religious organizations are important to achieve harmonious society and tolerance. And the importance of the empower moderates, especially the millennials, since the head speech of autonomy is important in social media. Mean that find solution, but to go out from our comfort zone to create common understanding. The role of women ulama in education, women empowerment and peace. And the last is we will fight for equality, for together, for peace, protect environment and unity together to contain pandemic. That is what we get from I think this webinar. So before we close the webinar, I would like again to thank you for your presentation and contribution to this webinar. I believe that is very valuable for us to broaden our knowledge on this issue. So again, I thank you very much for your presentation and contribution. Now I would like to give back the floor to our MC. Nona, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much once again to all distinguished panelists and participants. We hope you have a productive week ahead and hope to see you again soon. Buona giornata, selamat malam untuk Indonesia.
Thank you everyone. Looking forward to see you.
Terima kasih.
Terima kasih.
Terima kasih Pak Dubes.
Pak Dubes pamit.
Terima kasih Ibu Ruby.
Ibu
Siap.
Ruby.
Terima kasih. Thank you. Thank you all.
Terima
Appreciate.
kasih Romo
I really appreciate it.
Terima kasih.
Sayang sekali waktunya terlalu pendek. Banyak sebetulnya yang mau ditanyakan. Ibu Ruby, saya nanti mungkin perlu banyak bertanya lagi.
Iya Ibu, dengan senang hati. Boleh exchange yang lebih konkret lagi.
Ya, mungkin khusus tema yang khusus untuk
ya, boleh.
Kita bertemu di cara fisik semua, lagi.
Iya.
Iya.
Oke.
Thank you very much Dr.
Thank you.
Martin.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Pamit Ibu Dubes, pamit Pak Fahir dan
Ya, terima kasih. Terima kasih Bu. Thank you. Thank you.
Terima kasih banyak.
Terima kasih Pak Dubes.
Thank you everybody. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi. Thank you.
Jadi tutup, ya.